A scathing independent review of the Denver Sheriff's Department was released this week. The report, ordered by Mayor Michael Hancock in 2014, showed several operational flaws ranging from staff members being unable to accurately count inmates to inadequate emergency safety plans. You heard me correctly, to not be able to count inmates correctly. David, this report, and every high-priced consultant's going to come out with a pretty big report. That wasn't a shock, but I think it was like 277 recommendations. What must the mayor and the city government of Denver do in response to this review?
First of all, kudos to Mayor Hancock for going to a very high-quality outside source for this review, and they did a thorough job, identified a lot of problems. And he said, we're going to go forward and we're going to implement every single one of these reforms. So that's exactly the right thing to do. Now, Susan Green of the Colorado Independent wrote an article saying, great, but on the other hand, when you look at the team that Mayor Hancock has to implement these are all the same people who were in charge when the problems were going on in the first place. Some of these things are not cutting-edge jail management issues. There's a professional organization, the American Jail Association, that sets standards, provides professional training, all these things, and many of them are very obvious. For example, when there's a problem with an inmate, you don't necessarily have to use force as the first resort. You clearly want to be able to use force if you have to, but it doesn't have to be the first resort. And that is not something that's on the cutting edge of jail management. So it's really shocking that things are so badly managed at the Denver jail. Mayor Hancock didn't cause, like President Obama with the VA, he didn't cause the problem. He inherited it, didn't do much about it in his first term. Hopefully that'll change. You wonder about the alternate history world if in 2003, Artie Zavaris, the former police chief, had won that mayoral race against John Hickenlooper, because Zavaris, among other things, had been head of the Colorado Department of Corrections, running the state prison system, which, imperfect, is a lot better managed than the Denver jail. And maybe if Mayor Zavaris had been around, he would have been more hands-on about getting the Denver jail up to the minimal national standards of competence.
Penn, I didn't go through every part of the recommendations, but just a peripheral view seemed that it's going to take some funds and it's going to take some uncomfortable house cleaning. Mayor Hancock just got reelected with no real opponent, so he can say he has a pretty strong mandate. Does he have the political will and the capital at this point to make those uncomfortable decisions and to make this happen?
Well, first, credit to Mayor Hancock for having the studies conducted. He's got to have the political will. He has no choice, because we can't afford to let the current situation continue. It's a public relations nightmare. It's an embarrassment. And frankly, we don't have enough money to keep paying all these judgments for all these, inmates who keep getting beat up. So you've got to stop the bleeding at some point. I think the mayor knows that. And so we're going to have to see significant reform. We're going to have to see some personnel changes. It's not just dollars. My guess is that the sheriff's department is probably significantly understaffed. So there's going to have to be some more hiring. And I don't know how many applicants are in the pipeline. My guess is not enough to meet the needs. So there are a number of things that need to happen. But when you look at the report, what it really speaks to, some of the things they talk about are common sense. You can't count inmates. You don't know where they are, seriously. But a lot of it speaks to really a significant change in the mindset and the approach to corrections and management of inmates. Remember, most of the people the sheriff's department deals with are people who are awaiting trial, not people who've been convicted of anything. And so you're dealing with folks who are under that presumption of innocence until proven guilty. And so there's a different standard that really has to be applied to this particular population. No, it's going to be a tough choice, but given the fact that the mayor didn't have much opposition, he should feel the latitude to make some pretty radical and drastic changes and bruise a few egos and upset a few folks, but that's what it's going to take to fix this. We've been talking about this for months. This is just a massive mess, and it's going to take a Herculean effort to fix it.
Carrie, you go through some of these problems that this report revealed. Sheriffs didn't know which gang affiliation was in which cell, so who knows if they put a competing gangs right in the middle of a cell. They didn't know exactly the accurate number of things. It sounded like Barney Fife was in charge. What do you think it's going to take to make these changes happen?
Well, the report found dysfunction at every level within the sheriff's office, at every level. That's astonishing. And Penn's right, of course, again, that this has been going on for so long. And so what is it going to take to convince the administration and convince Mayor Hancock to take a look at cleaning house from the top down or from the bottom up, it doesn't matter, but making sure that these law enforcement officers and folks in the jail are trained, not as warriors, but as law enforcement. If the repeated civil rights violations that are occurring isn't enough to get his attention, then yes, I would think the massive payouts that are happening, $11 million since 2011, or $12 million since 2011, you'd think that the money should start grabbing the ears of not only Mayor Hancock but the taxpayers.
Patty, Mayor Hancock's going to have a relatively new city council, a lot of new faces, at least 6 new faces. How do you think that's going to affect what he wants to do?
Well, everybody on city council and in every level of city government should want changes. This is outrageous. And the fact that we've had to wait for this report, the report definitely was worth waiting for, but they could have done some changes in the meantime. We could have maybe cut back on some of those $12 million in the settlements. What's fascinating about this report, besides the incredible depths, more than 270 suggestions, is the reference to Dickens. I guess we should be glad that they didn't refer to Solzhenitsyn, and because really the only thing worse than what we're hearing about Denver jail would be calling it a gulag. And ironically, Denver voters less than a decade ago voted to tax ourselves so we could build a state-of-the-art jail and justice system, which we obviously don't have. So Hancock didn't have any opposition when he was running, really, but he will get opposition, I think, from residents to paying out for any more settlements because of incompetence at the Sheriff's Department.